I'm going to go ahead and welcome everyone to the launch of our Beyond Resistance campaign. So happy to have you all here. We had over 600 people to register, and I think we'll have going on 300 people participating with us tonight. My name is Anthony Flacavento. I'm the director of the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative, and I have a fantastic team working with me in the launch of Beyond Resistance, a campaign to reclaim our nation for the workers who build it. Ruby is not alone in this campaign. In fact, we have a wealth of extraordinary partners, some of whom are small and local, very focused on local organizing, local activities, some of whom are regional, and some of whom are national. Some of these partners are more partisan, others are nonpartisan. Some are focused more on understanding and teaching about how to overcome the divide, while others are working in the trenches to actually do it. What we all have in common, these tremendous partners in this campaign, is that everyone is an extraordinarily effective organization and is laser focused on rural and or working class people and communities, lifting up their challenges and struggles and actually doing the work that we need to do to begin to elevate those concerns and build a far better society. I'm going to pause for a minute because most of you, I'm sure, have heard the news that Charlie Kirk, the right-wing youth activist, was murdered today at a rally in Utah. His murder comes 3 months after State Representative Melissa Hortman, representative to the Minnesota State Assembly, was murdered along with her husband, and State Senator John Hoffman and his wife also shot. This political violence that is becoming more commonplace and seemingly more and more at the brink for so many people. Every politician that I've heard so far has talked about the need to end this political violence, and all of us on this call would agree with that 100%. However, it doesn't just end because we say it has to end. It ends because we start to rebuild trust in each other and in the institutions that tie us together. And it ends because we rebuild a society, an economy, and a politics in which people feel like they're heard and feel like their needs and values are respected and addressed. That's what this campaign is about. That's what every partner in this campaign is about. We came together just a couple of months ago, decided to launch this campaign with two fundamental goals. First of all, prioritize rural and working class people and how this administration has betrayed these rural and working class folks, including also small businesses, family farmers, manufacturers. But secondly, not only to lift up these betrayals and the suffering and struggles of those folks, but to simultaneously put forward a clear, compelling, positive vision backed up by policies and actions that actually addresses the grievances that people has, that actually lifts up strategies to build this better society. Since Trump entered office, we've been resisting. I'm guessing everybody in this Zoom room has been out on one or more protests. And they've galvanized millions of Americans from small towns to big cities. And they brought us out saying that we've got to stop the destruction of our democracy. We've got to resist oligarchy. We've got to fight to ensure that there are no kings. All of that extremely important. But how often have our protests, our rallies, our collective outrage also included what's happening to family farmers who have been hit in so many different ways, from shrinking markets to rising input costs from tariffs to the cancellation of contracts they had with the government? How often are we focusing on them, centering them in our protests and our social media? How often are we talking about the miners, coal miners and others who have seen not only a delay in projects that were supposed to improve economic alternatives in coal mining communities, but they've also seen the federal government cutting back on mine safety, critical mine safety, officers and offices that help with Black lung? Or how often have we included folks struggling to make ends meet? Now we have an economy where a lot of the basics, from eggs to meat to coffee, are skyrocketing in price. And that's in the news, but too often we're not centering that in our campaigns. When we go out and we galvanize people and we talk about this decay, this decline, this attack on our democracy, at one level, we're telling people what they should believe and what they should care about, but that usually doesn't work. We know that the DC consultants have been laser focused on this threat to democracy for over a year now, since early in 2024. And yet, 3/4 of swing voters who ultimately voted for Trump said they thought the Democrats were too focused on fighting Trump rather than bringing the country together. And among focus groups of Black and Latino working class voters interviewed by the New York Times, they said that Democrats' dire warnings about the threat to democracy felt far less compelling compared with the urgency of their own struggles to pay the rent. Katrina vanden Heuvel just had an article in The Nation, came out yesterday or today, and she said cracks are starting to appear in Trump's base. Between February and April of this year, the president's rural approval rating slumped from 59 to 40%. It opens a space through which Democrats might be able to drive a wedge, and we could add to that independents and others, if only they can offer the progressive populist solutions needed by town and country alike. That's what this campaign is about. It's a collective effort launched this evening, ongoing for many months to come, to lift up the challenges, the struggles, the pain of everyday folks, working people, unions, farmers, and small businesses, and to consistently and relentlessly put forward far-reaching, pragmatic platforms that will not only address the short-term concerns, but will build a much better, fairer society in the long run. That's what we're asking all of you who are joining us now to engage in over these next many months. Now, tonight's event is going to be follow this flow. Right now, we're going to move to a discussion of the 4 core elements of the Beyond Resistance campaign. Following that, we hope to have Representative Ro Khanna join us. He's in several critical committee meetings and committee votes this evening, but somewhere in the next 15 to 20 minutes, we hope that Representative Khanna will join us and talk to us about why he is embracing and joining this campaign. Then we will go to questions from our media partners who are on the call, and after that, open it up to everybody for Q&A. If time allows, and we hope it does, we're going to set aside about 10 to 15 minutes to break into small groups. Actually, they won't be very small, but into working groups in 4 separate rooms in each of these 4 elements. You'll be given the option to join. And at that point, we will be brainstorming different ways that we can bring these elements to the fore and to life. So we're going to shift now to having different partners in the campaign discuss a little bit about each of the 4 basic elements. We're going to start with Ronnie Collins, who's with the Policy Pulse. He's in Eastern Kentucky, and he's a member of the Kentucky Young Democrats. Ronnie is going to be talking about the commitment that we need to make to workers and rural communities. Then Sarah Janes from the Rural Democracy Initiative will be talking about rural success stories, how to find them, how to promote them. Then we'll have Alan Minsky of PDA, the Progressive Democrats of America, talking about policy solutions that deliver, including the Rural New Deal. And lastly, we'll have Meredith Dean and Chanel Carr discussing strategies to rebuild trust across the divide, including the community work strategy. So we're going to go to element 1 now. Ronnie.
My name is Ronnie Collins, and I run the Policy Pulse. I'm also the president of the Perry County Young Dems out of southeastern Kentucky, pretty deep in Appalachia. And I'm pretty proud to be here tonight, and I'm proud to be partnered with the Beyond Resistance campaign because too often people in places like mine are treated as an afterthought, or worse, we're written off entirely, but we are worth it. Rural people and young rural people are very worth investing in. In our region, we've seen jobs disappear, healthcare be stripped away, and addiction run unchecked. Broadband is still out of reach for so many families, and this is holding back students and small businesses alike. And when the Trump administration started slashing protections and gutting rural programs, it sent a very clear message that rural communities don't matter. But I want to be very clear. We do matter. Every young person in Appalachia or other rural communities who dreams of building a future in their home is worth fighting for. Every worker who puts in long hours but still struggles to make the ends meet is worth it. And this betrayal isn't just in policy. It's in telling us that our lives and our futures aren't valuable enough to protect. And that's a lie we have to wholeheartedly reject. Beyond resistance is more than just fighting against what's wrong. It's about fighting for what's right. It means saying yes to the people in the communities that are way too often left behind. Yes to jobs that pay a living wage. Yes to schools and healthcare that give young people a fair shot. Yes to rural towns that deserve to thrive instead of empty out. The left has to prove every single day that we are committed to rural America because rural America is worth it. So tonight, I invite y'all to act. Lift up the stories of betrayal that workers and rural people face. Use Ruby's action kit for social media posts. Use the examples in the Trump betrayal tracker. Also, make signs about rural people and the working class for your next protest, which Ruby also has a list of ideas for as well. And join us in organizing local pro worker rallies. But most of all, remember this: rural people are worth the fight. Young people in Appalachia and other rural areas are worth the future we're all striving to build together.
Wonderful, Ronnie. Thank you so very much. That's a view of our betrayal tracker and some of the opportunities in the Beyond Resistance campaign. We'll come back and talk more about that in the breakout room. Sarah.
Hi there. I want to talk about elevating rural success stories that demonstrate how rural people and businesses and groups can work together to solve problems and revitalize their communities. We know that people want to be part of a winning team. They like to join things that give them hope and make them feel like they're making a difference. But unfortunately, many of the people who decide where resources flow in philanthropy and government and politics live in cities. And as you know, they have all kinds of negative stereotypes about rural people and places, and this holds all of us back. So at Rural Democracy Initiative, we are full-time hype people for the promise of rural America as the mission critical leaders in the coalition that is going to push the pendulum back towards progress. So our sister program, Resource Rural, runs an incredible storytelling program. They call it the Story Wire, with freelance journalists and local photographers and videographers in rural places that can document and then market out community success stories, the solar panels on the church, the small meat processing facility that brings jobs to the community. Right now, they're mostly focused on impacts of public funding. For example, some of the stories, you might have seen the New York Times 50 States, 50 Fixes series. Some of those stories came from our Resource Rural program. But they'll also do small local ad buys that are targeting a particular local decision maker, if that makes more sense. I just wanted to mention that program, we have recent testing that shows that even with the intense negative impacts and loss that rural communities and working class communities are experiencing from federal policies right now, we get so much more engagement and action with positive framing. So I'm going to ask you to work with the Beyond Resistance campaign to find these stories of people working together to solve problems and make good things happen. And then get these story ideas to Ruby, who is collecting them and marketing them out, or just reach out to us too. We can connect you with our story team or connect you with Public News Service. We have them on contract to produce over 100 radio stories each year with us. Or we can think about how to work with one of our other news partners like Courier or Barn Raiser or Daily Yonder or other platforms that actually reach beyond rural audiences. Just to leave you with, we know that people make sense of the world through stories. So let's change the narrative about what's possible for rural America. Thank you.
Fantastic, Sarah. Thank you so much. I mean, I can't say enough about how important it is to also talk about the good, about what's happening, because too often part of how the left has ceded rural America and small towns to the extreme right has been by giving up on it ourselves. And as Sarah says, there's many resources to counter that dismal narrative. We'll go to the third element now with Alan Minsky. Alan.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And have been honored to work with Anthony these past few years, beginning as we drafted together the Rural New Deal proposal from Ruby and Progressive Democrats of America. I totally agree with what Anthony just said, but nonetheless, it is also true that over the last 40 or 45 years in our history, the general sociological trajectory of rural and small town America has not been going up. It's largely been going sideways and down. There's a lot of endemic poverty across rural America. And so and not only that, we have a situation where one political party, the mainstream of the Democratic Party, largely abandoned contesting elections in this region. And so you have almost single party rule. And when you have a situation in which the direction of the society is not working out for the large body of the population in rural and small town America, while the Republican Party is dominant politically, there's tremendous dissatisfaction with the direction of the society. This means there's an opening, a real opening, especially if there is put forward a clear set of policies that speak directly to the sociological problems, the economic problems, the problems of people to make a living, the cost of living in rural America, and the general trajectory of the society. And that's what we did draft. And we drafted in the Rural New Deal a proposal that speaks directly to so many of the endemic problems and incredible possibilities across rural America. And it's a very detailed policy set of proposals. And I'm sure there are overlap with a few of the other proposals that other organizations have put out. And it has 10 pillars at the top. And all of them have detailed policies relating to them. And the 10 pillars of a Rural New Deal are rebuild farm, forest, and food economies, reward work and ensure livable wages, dismantle monopolies, empower and support local business, invest in community and regional infrastructure, rebuild small town centers, cultivate self-reliance and resilience, invest in rural health care, fully fund rural schools, make rural and small town housing affordable, and relocalize rural and small town banks. All 10 of these have very specific policies, all of which we believe very strongly would create a general economic and sociological uplift to rural and small town America. And on policy after policy for all of these 10, they also go along with 5 principles that inform the Rural New Deal, which largely speak to the way in which the policies from the national level need to be flexible. They need local participation. They need to be pro-worker. And of course, they have a whole set of themes that also fit in along ecological sustainability and dissipating corporate control over rural and small town economies. So again, this is a proposal that speaks specifically to what ails so much of rural and small town America. It's flexible in terms of its requiring local input and organization of the policies as they're implemented. And by presenting this kind of idea, I think we can transform not only politics across rural and small town America, but also politics in the United States writ large. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. I mean, one of the things that's been shocking to me is the lack of a policy proposal being put forth by the opposition when the Rural New Deal and Sarah's RDI's Rural Policy Action Plan and others are ready. They're ready to take and embrace and endorse. So hopefully we'll begin to see some movement. And now our final element around local engagement and rebuilding trust. Meredith Dean and Chanel Carr are going to do this one together. Meredith.
Thank you, Anthony. Chanel and I are going to talk about Ruby's very successful Community Works program. We're the ones that are boots on the ground, working side by side with neighbors to try to rebuild trust across the huge political divides that are tearing our local communities apart. So far, C-Works has held over 500 local events, from rehabbing church buildings to installing fire alarms with the Red Cross, river and road cleanups with the Department of Transportation. We've even sponsored a small town Easter egg hunt. Right now, we've got volunteers working with local farmers to deliver fresh veggies to preschool students. This used to happen through USDA funded farm to school programs, but with the national funding for that being cut by $1 billion, we're going to need more and more locally supported alternatives. We also have volunteers supporting public libraries. One county's Board of Supervisors just cut their library's budget by almost $800,000. So we all know that in rural communities, the libraries are like the heartbeat of our communities. So meaning that neighbors of all political stripes are willing to come together through CWorks to try to save them. And as we volunteer together, we're beginning to talk to and trust each other, sometimes for the very first time. Lots of people who have moved into rural areas have just sort of stayed in their blue or red bubble. But for others, such as myself, I spent 18 years sitting next to my conservative neighbors, watching our kids play sports together. And then we had what I call the great estrangement of 2016. So this has been a great way for me to reconnect and rebuild trust that definitely has been hurt, if not broken. Overall, CWorks offers a structure for year-round organizing that goes way beyond traditional campaign-based outreach. What I've heard from many inactive Dems is that they always felt that if they weren't willing to knock on doors or make phone calls, they really had nothing to offer their local communities. CWorks is giving everybody this whole array of possibilities for visibly engaging and doing good as groups of Democrats, but based on people's own skills, time, and commitment levels. And with that, I'll hand it to you, Chanel.
So how are CWork initiatives changing and rebuilding that trust? We're doing it by showing the community that we're in this together. So after listening to Anthony's presentation, that's what came to mind. We're in this together. So when we approach it with that, we're in this together attitude, then we show that people from all walks of life are able to work together for a common goal. So Community Works has shown in our communities that trust is not built on words alone, but through the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Chanel. So our call to action is that people actually consider forming a local chapter in their community or something similar. And the first step to a Community Works chapter is to attend our Bridging the Divide with Community Works intro session that we hold every fourth Wednesday on Zoom.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Chanel. So I hope everybody has a little bit of a sense now of how we plan to implement this. Of course, we're flexible and open to ideas, but essentially what we're saying is that we believe that each of these elements is critically important to defeating Trump and turning back this horrible onslaught of catastrophic policies and actions, and to rebuilding our politics so that it actually serves workers, farmers, rural people. The four elements, again, being a commitment to lifting up workers and rural communities, both the harm being done to them and the tremendous opportunities to work there. Promoting rural success stories through multiple venues, including the media and social media and just word of mouth. Putting forward the Rural New Deal and other concrete policy platforms that show that we have paths forward to build a better society. And last, and absolutely not least, rebuilding trust at the local level through engagement through Community Works or similar approaches to that. I'm going to pause there because we're almost ready to open it up to questions from the media. I'll ask Jean and Jackie, have we had any contact yet from Congressman Khanna?
Yes, he should be on any moment.
Any moment.
Yes.
Would you like me to start wrapping up, or should we just pause and wait to see if he gets on?
Let's see, you could do the events. Do you want to do?
Well, let's look at Ro's handsome mug for 10 seconds.
I'm told he's joining now.
Okay, great.
Joining now. We might need to buy just a little bit more time.
Okay, all
I
right.
think he's in between votes.
Okay, well, let me, I just stopped sharing, so I'm going to go back to sharing again. But let me mention to everybody who's on the call that you should be thinking now about which of the four breakout rooms you'd like to go in. I think we are going to have time for that. And the breakout rooms, again, are sort of the start of a conversation about what's possible. There's already about 15 events on the calendar over the next 3 months as part of the Beyond Resistance campaign. We'd like to see the number of events quadruple, many of them local in person, others national and virtual. Looks like Ro is here. Excellent. So we'll bring him in. Hello, Ro.
Hi, how are you, Anthony? Good to see you the other day.
Good to see you as well in Pennington Gap, Virginia. What a trip that was.
Well, it was great. I appreciated your being there and appreciated being in Pennington. That was fantastic to be there for Abigail and to see the enthusiasm in Pennington and the Democratic Party.
Listen, people felt like they had seen Sophia Loren. You were a huge hit, Ro. So,
You're the one who's doing the hard work, and I am grateful to you, Anthony, and I am grateful for your vision on the rural New Deal. It's incredible. You've helped influence me, and you've really helped influence my thinking on it. And I just want to thank everyone on this call because it's not going to be enough for us to just be against Donald Trump, but we have to understand why people are upset about the loss of the American dream, why place matters, why places like Pennington matter, where Pennington doesn't have enough good jobs, doesn't have enough investment in hospitals, doesn't have enough investment in healthcare, and in able to make sure that the kids stay in those communities. And the Democrats really need not just to show up, but need a vision for how we're going to bring economic security and independence to rural America, to factory towns, how we're going to make sure that local communities are respected, how we're going to make sure that local communities are leading the revitalization, that it's not the Washington, D.C. that's dictating it, whether that's investment in a local factory, whether it's investment in local technology jobs, local healthcare jobs, a local hospital or a local school, whether it's making sure that a local farmer doesn't have to drive 100 miles to get inspection from the USDA, or a rancher or rancher can sell their meat locally instead of having to go somewhere because there's no inspection locally. Whatever the issues are, we have to figure out how we get the local rural communities input, how we make sure that we're really focused on them. And Anthony, your work and the Rural New Deal and Alan Minsky's work on putting this forward has been extraordinary. And so my philosophy has been an economic patriotism, that we have to figure out a unifying economic message for high-paying jobs across this country, for building wealth across this country, for bridging the economic divides, and for figuring out how we lower costs, healthcare costs, housing costs, childcare costs. And that's exactly what the Rural New Deal is part of. It's part of really understanding the uh, the communities that don't feel that they have had the American dream alive in the modern economy. You have both good paying jobs become less stable, wages have stagnated, and the cost of healthcare almost to double for a family. The cost of childcare almost double. The cost of housing almost double. And this is why we really need a what I call a Marshall Plan for America, not just for Europe. And the Rural New Deal I see is very much part of that. And it's part of respecting also people's way of life and trying to understand the differences. I mean, on such a tragic day today where we saw these shooting of Charlie Kirk, assassination, the shooting of the kids at school, something is really deeply ill about America, hurting in our country, the divisions. And it's for all of us to figure out how we model a better way, how we try to heal some of these wounds, how we move forward as a nation. And I believe the project of the Rural New Deal is more than an economic project. It's a project of trying to bridge some of the deepest divides in this country and forge a path forward. So I am grateful to you, Anthony, and to you, Alan, for the leadership here and for the leadership in really uh, working on this proposal. I will say that there's a effort by Robin Johnson, who's I don't know if he joined the call, and Sherry Bustos of talking to working class candidates who represent working class neighborhoods, and they issued a report that I think can be very helpful. I know, Anthony, you ran for Congress, so you have a fundamental understanding, but their report also talks about what we need to do to build uh, community and build trust in places that we've lost. And so, listening to them, working with them in this rural New Deal would be extraordinary. Alan,
Ro,
did you want to have a dialogue at all? Or I mean, I've got a vote set around 7:45, but I don't know if there's people who have any comments, either you or Anthony, or questions.
well, I was going to say, Ro, if you have a few minutes still, I can see that you're moving from one place to another. This might be a good time for us to open it up to the media that have joined the call. They could have questions for you or for any of the people who've presented before you got on. I'm gonna start with one question to you, and then Jean and Jackie, if you would look to see if any of our media partners want to raise their hands and come off and ask questions. But Ro, my question for you is, it's really tempting for all of us to just stay focused on how horrible Donald Trump is, because it doesn't seem like a day goes by without some other unbelievable thing that he's done that has violated the Constitution or undermined people or been cruel to vulnerable groups of folks. How do you strike that balance? And or more importantly, how would you recommend that we surely do lift up those harms, but also recognize that just focusing on Trump alone doesn't do the trick? How do you strike that balance?
Well, I think we have to speak out very clearly and boldly where he is violating the Constitution. I mean, obviously, we don't want to militarize our streets. We don't want to stop vaccines in this country. We do not want to dismantle federal agencies, the NIH, the NSF. We want transparency. That's why I've been pushing with Thomas Massie for the Epstein files release, that standing with survivors, standing with protecting America's children. 217 now have signed that discharge petition for Republicans, including Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Nancy Mace. But we make it about issues. The Epstein files are not about anti-Trump. It's actually about building a coalition that includes some of MAGA voters on transparency. And then we have to go and say, well, why are people voting for Trump? And some of them are voting because they've lost faith in the American dream. Some because they've lost faith in the political system. And our enemy or our opponent is not it's our opponent isn't so much Trump as it is the cynicism and despair that has given rise to Trump. It is a form of anger and division and despair in this country. And so we need to offer an alternative vision, a vision of both economic patriotism, what I call a vision to invest in every community and every family, so that families and communities across this country can have economic success and economic independence. So we bridge the economic divides that are tearing our country apart, and to model a citizenship that isn't mimicking Trump in mockery and hurling insults and seeing who can curse louder. Donald Trump won twice on fear and anger. But I don't understand why the Democrats feel that that's now the model to emulate to win. I mean, that's not how FDR won. That's not how John F. Kennedy won. That's not how Ronald Reagan won. That's not how Barack Obama won. That's not how Bill Clinton won. That's not how Bernie Sanders did as well. We have so many examples in our history of people who modeled a better citizenship, who inspired us, who had offered us hope. And I'm talking regardless of their ideology, because obviously I don't agree with all the people I mentioned's ideology. I'm talking about what they projected in terms of the nation. And so my view is that the Democrats, especially after a day like today, I mean, this country is tired of the type of politics that Trump represents. And we need to not just offer an alternative vision for the economics of this country. We need to offer an alternative vision for what it means to be a citizen. We need to offer a big-hearted vision of what it means to be an American, an American who respects each other as fellow citizens, who is not afraid of each other, who is not afraid of doing big things. And that's the kind of politics that I believe will inspire people, will have energy behind it, and will win.
Thank you, Ro. That's great. We have questions coming up now. We have some in the chat. I'm going to start with Michelle Rathman from Rural Impact. You need to come off mute, Michelle.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much for this event. And I'm super proud to be a part of this entire organization. I mean, aside from hosting the Rural Impact, I've been in rural healthcare my entire career, like 30 something years. And Anthony and I have talked offline about the fact that healthcare really should be, in my opinion, aside from my work and on the podcast, I work with rural hospitals across this country. And there is truly a sense of fear about what is about to happen. Although the FY26 budget is kind of in this phase right now where we're contemplating how rural health will be funded, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act absolutely decimates rural health. It completely eliminates protections from Medicaid. There's a lot of Medicare provisions with SNAP cuts and so forth. And so I really believe that we need to be talking about what will happen to our rural hospitals, our rural health clinics, our community health centers. We are going to have $1 trillion in cuts. We're going to have millions of people kicked off Medicaid that they don't even know that they're on it. So my question really is, how do we come together and make sure that everybody understands that healthcare truly is on the chopping block, and that the implications won't just be hitting rural hospitals, but it will hit all communities across the board, because this will create a cascading effect for those who are insured by commercial plans, their employer plans. Once the ball starts rolling, there's no turning back. It will be decades before we can recover. And by then we will lose institutions that once provided care for rural Americans. And I think that's an extremely important point for us to make sure that we hit home and hit it home hard.
Thank you, Michelle. Ro, did you want to comment on that?
Well, I couldn't say anything better than what Michelle just did. I mean, I think she's absolutely right. It's going to mean the closure of rural hospitals, closure of services for rural America. It's going to mean everyone's premium is going to go up, because how are hospitals going to pay for things when Medicaid is not paying them what they were relying on? And this is what we need to highlight in the September 30th budget fight, to make it clear that we're not going to give a single vote to the Republicans until they restore the Medicaid funding. And I've been doing town halls across this country in red districts making exactly that point. So thank you for being so precise and eloquent about that. I completely agree with you. That has to be the central message, not just in rural America, but for the Democratic Party, that they've taken away our people's health care, our health care for tax breaks for billionaires.
Thank you, Ro. And thanks for the question, Michelle. I'd only add to that in our rural success stories, I'm sure we'll also be lifting up some of the novel and innovative ways with mobile health clinics and other things where rural healthcare has been basically stretching the dollar and bringing primary care to people in many different parts of the country. I'm going to go now to a question in the chat from Dwayne Yancey of Cardinal News. And Dwayne has asked, he's made the comment that that they have seen at Cardinal News, they've just done a study and seen that there is, coming to his thing, that they have found that in rural Virginia this year, we have elections in Virginia, 2025, there are fewer than 10 local candidates running as Democrats. This would be for State House, State Senate. And he's asking, what are the next practical steps for this campaign to turn something like that around, to basically challenge what is essentially one party rule, not just in Virginia, but elsewhere? So I have a thought, but I'll see if there's any of the partners on the call or anybody, Sarah or anybody else who spoke earlier who wants to talk about how we might begin to change that.
Anthony, if I could say in part in response to the woman who spoke a moment ago, also look, the sum effect of Trump's policies on rural and small town America is not going to be positive. In fact, it's going to be incredibly disruptive. Clearly, the tariffs are impacting agricultural production, how that's going to go forward. And so this is an opportunity for Democrats writ large, but particularly our cast of Democrats, to put forward very clearly alternate proposals and present them writ large to rural America, and encourage all progressive people, all Democrats across the country to run for office, because we actually have a set of, again, national economic policies that can be applied flexibly to localities that will improve the lives of people in rural and small town America. Because I think with this single party rule across rural and small town America, under Trump, things are only going to get worse. I think there's no evidence that things will.
I need to thank you, Alan. I need to step off for votes, but I just want to thank you, Alan, and thank you, Anthony, for your incredible work, and everyone on this call. I feel energized by having over 300 people committed to this and on this call. It's really inspiring. So I'm a big fan. I'm going to be talking about the Rural New Deal everywhere, and really admire what you're doing.
Thank you so much for being part of this, Ro, and being a supporter of the campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to return to Dwayne's question here for a moment, and we'll get some more questions from the media. I'll say a couple things in response, Dwayne. One of our partners is Chloe Maxman with Dirt Road Organizing. Chloe is a former first state House legislator and then state senator in rural Maine, won 2 consecutive races in rural districts. And what Dirt Road Organizing does is it trains rural and working class people to run for office. And they have only been around a couple of years. It's only a couple of years ago that Chloe left her position in the state house, decided not to run again. And they've already trained over 24 candidates. These are people who really come from the local communities, but they're giving them a leg up in how to run campaigns effectively. So that's one of the partners in this campaign. And Chloe is going to be sharing some of the success stories that come out of that. Additionally, we're going to be setting up over the next few weeks a site on the Beyond Resistance website that tracks rural and working class candidates running around the country. It will be state level and national. There's probably too many to do it for local offices, but state and national people, we're going to be lifting up the kinds of folks that are emerging in Iowa and Maine and Virginia and elsewhere. We're going to be putting them on a website with just a little bit of information about them and their campaign and a link so that anybody participating can get involved with their campaign as a volunteer, as a financial supporter, et cetera. So those are 2 small steps that we'll take to address this problem that basically there's too many non-Republicans in rural who are not running because they feel deterred. I'm going to go to Christopher Cook now. Chris, you want to ask your question? Can you come off mute? Jackie, can we unmute him? Is there any reason that Chris?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Okay.
He is not muted at the moment.
Yeah, okay, I think you're good now.
Can you speak, Chris? No, we're not hearing him. I'm going to go, while we're trying to figure out what's going on with Chris, I'm going to go to John Weiner, who has joined. John, if you have a question you'd like to ask.
There. Okay, you can hear me now. Yes?
Yes.
This there's some other groups working in the rural space, and especially and I just wonder what kind of relations you have with them. Do they fund you? Do you fund them? It's complicated.
Well, this campaign involves certainly not every group working in the rural space, but a lot of them. We have Rural Democracy Initiative, Rust Belt Rising, No Dem Left Behind, Rural Organizing. Just today, we got news that Public Citizen is joining the campaign. They're not rural, but they do work in rural. We have quite a few groups and many others considering joining the campaign, John. So this has been a kind of an effort to bring as many of those groups in, so long as they focus on rural and working class. And at this point, we have about 15 partners altogether. I'm sure we'll have many more as the campaign proceeds.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Can we try to go back to Chris? Let's see if we can get him. Is there some magic to get him off mute? Can you try unplugging from your headphones and just going right into your computer? No difference. Well, doggone it. I don't know what to make of that. We'll keep trying. Chris, maybe you'd be willing to put your question in the chat. That would be great. I'm sorry that we're not able to bring you off. I don't know why that is, but keep trying and put your question
Hello?
in. Yes?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, wow. Seventh or eighth time as a term.
That's right.
Thanks so much for the program today. I wanted to ask anybody there who wants to answer, I guess, politically in sort of policy terms, what do you feel the Democrats need to change? Clearly, if you matched up, I think, like Democratic versus Republican policies on almost every issue, or many of the issues, let's say, facing rural Americans, the Democrats would probably look better in terms of things like, infrastructure, job creation, hospitals, healthcare, maybe not on some of the social and cultural issues. But what is it that's missing from a policy standpoint that the Democrats are not proposing or doing when they are in office that needs to change?
Well, I'll start that, and I'll also, again, open up to our other partners, other Ruby members, if they want to answer. I think the single biggest thing that's missing is it simply isn't a top tier priority. I think about every Democratic candidate who's run for president in the last many cycles has had some kind of a rural platform, in some cases an agricultural platform. But what's talked about, what's centered, and where most of the energy seems to go once elected, when Democrats are elected, rural seems to get pushed pretty far down the list of policy priorities. One example of this was that when Barack Obama was running his first term, he met with people in rural places, farmers specifically in Iowa and elsewhere, talking about the Packers and Stockyards Act, which is this 100-year-old law that pretty much writes the rules that farmers in contract with big ag processors have to follow. It's been devastating to farmers for the last couple of generations. And in discussions, it sounded like the Obama administration was going to finally tackle this really huge problem that many small farmers had. Once in office, that didn't happen for a combination of reasons that having to do with money and politics and the influence of big ag, but it actually was deprioritized. So I think from our point of view, the single most important thing is to just make sure that the policies, whether they're trade, antitrust, economic development, agricultural, the policies that will actually make a difference in rural and working class communities are talked about much more, and then once in power, they're acted on. I don't know if Sarah or anybody else would like to add to that.
I'll just add that from my perspective, it's really not a policy problem. It is a kind of an image and culture problem, and that Democrats need to show up and run. They need to be from there. They need to be building campaigns year round that will support them. And then they need to be the party for working people, like full stop, end of story. Democrats are the party for working people. They need to say it over and over, and they need to center working people as the heroes of their story. It's not government coming in to save them. It's the working people that are the heroes of the story. And then you build your policy agenda around that. I'm a big believer in advancing a practical, hopeful policy agenda, but you need to start with centering the working people.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have anybody else from the media who would like to ask a question before we wrap this segment up? Chris Butner?
Hey, how you doing? Anthony,
Good.
we met a couple of years ago when you were in Tuolumne County doing a presentation for Sierra Forward, I think
I
it
remember
was.
that. Yes.
And I am the publisher of Calaveras 2026 election.com. It's not so much a question as just a bit of advice that what we need to consider in terms of all of the corruption going on at the federal level is all of the corruption happening at the local level. Because I'm a hyper-local blog due to the fact that we're in a news desert out here in Calaveras County, we are on the Golden Chain Highway, which is Highway 49 through the Sierra foothills of California. And I in a news desert like Amador County, Calaveras, Tuolumne, and Mariposa, which is technically the lower intestinal tract of the Highway 49 in rural California, we don't know what's going on with our local government. And there's a lot of talk about what to do at the federal level. If we do not take a real good hard look on the proliferation of corruption, and I'm calling you from California. I wish Ro was still on the phone with us because the corruption throughout local, county, and city governments in California is absolutely not just endemic, but it's an epidemic at this stage of the game. I just put into the chat a book I think everybody should read. It's by Miranda Spivak, Backroom Deals in Our Own Backyards. And in 2.5 years, I've investigated my own Calaveras County government, 240 blog posts. I have gone before this Board of Supervisors 70 times. All 4 incumbent supervisors, with the new 5th one that just came on board in January, are all under investigation by the Fair Political Practices Commission, and I put 4 of them there. So if we cannot ignore the local corruption in our little tiny incorporated communities as well as to our rural counties, because you're going to have no credibility if you're skipping over the corruption at the local level and you think you're going to tackle it at the state and federal level. Because let me tell you, brother, what I am finding at the state level, because of the connective tissue from the county up to the state, it's really pretty bad. And check out my website. It's called Calaveras2026election.com. Anthony, what you're doing is great. I'm going to email you more on this when this is over with. Thank you for doing this. It was a real honor to be on the call with Ro Khanna. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I think part of this campaign, in beyond the corruption question that Chris raises, is also just not to forget the local in all that we're doing, because there is a tendency, especially I think among folks on the left, to jump to kind of the big stuff. And in everything, both the things we need to fight and the things we need to lift up, we need to absolutely pay a great deal of attention to local. So I'll give one last call out to see. I know that Bob Kuttner is here from This American Prospect and Bryce Oates from Cocklebur. Any questions from any of you all before we wrap up this segment? Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go back to the PowerPoint ever so briefly to just kind of tell you what's coming next. And this is just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of what's coming next. As I said at the outset, tonight is just the launch night. This is the beginning. And we have multiple activities planning. Some of them were already in the plan. Some of them have been worked up since the campaign began. In September, there's several actions from postcarding in swing states to a presentation by Joan Williams about can the left win back the working class, and a tremendous event with Sean Fain that the Center for Working Class Politics is putting on towards the end of the month. As you'll see, as we list, this is just a little sampling. Some of these events are virtual, some are local and in the real world. In October, Ruby's going to be having some workshops about the Beyond Resistance as it rolls out to get more people involved and figure out how to plan local and regional events. Farm Action is doing farmer fly-ins in early October, the 8th and 9th, literally flying family farmers to Washington to fight some anti-family farmer policies that are unfolding around in California and around the country. And Community Works is holding its first ever summit in the third week of October, the 22nd, a fantastic time to learn more about what you heard from Chanel and Meredith. Those events continue in November with Barbara Kingsolver doing a monthly briefing about her work and her most recent book, Demon Copperfield. Ruby and Rural Democracy Initiative are going to be working together on a seminar called Revitalizing Rural America, Policies That Work. That's on the 10th of October, the 10th of November. And we're going to also be having an event unfolding or unveiling some new research done at the community level by Ruby, led by Cody Lawning, called It's the Humanities, Stupid, Why Democrats Don't Compete in Rural and Republicans Don't Have to. And then lastly, even a few events in December, including one that's really exciting, work by the Center for American Progress about a strategy they're developing to completely not undo, but bypass Citizens United at state levels by avoiding election laws and going to corporate incorporation laws. So that gives you a little sampling of just some of the upcoming events. A lot of what we hope from many of the partners on this call is that you'll join with Ruby, Rural Democracy Initiative, Dirt Road Organizing, PDA, and others to plan events throughout the fall and into next year. So at this point, I'll stop sharing and we will open it up to any other Q&A before we move into our breakout rooms. Looks like we have a question from David. Let's see. David.
Is my audio on?
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a 4.5 to 5 year project we've had going. I'm a journalist with My Rural America. I'm also a trained community organizer with a long decades of experience, and we have a project led by the Democratic Party leaders in Kossuth County, Iowa, north central Iowa, that's very successful in setting the stage for a major reorientation in bipartisan fashion, meeting, as they call themselves, the needs of the local community, calling their party a party in service to community. I just wanted to mention how important it is to hear those stories that Sarah Janes is talking about to help all of us educate each other as to what can be done in practical ways at the very local level. I liked your last speaker, Chris, I think, who really focused on the local need to rebuild the parties.
That's great, David. Thank you. I hope you'll join the breakout room talking about rural success stories and talk a bit more about your project. Phil Gerson, if you want to come off mute.
Yeah, just a very simple thing. I've been associated with Braver Angels and have followed you. You do great work. The two things that I would really like to got to Ro Khanna, if we had that, I love the concept of the New Deal. So why doesn't the Democratic Party do two things? One, make the statement, back then we missed some of those middle level voters, but come out with the policies for the New Deal. I mean, here's what we're going to do. and make sure that men can see a pathway to to a job with dignity. All men, rural and the other thing is get your experts on AI and inform the country about take some of the fear away from AI. Everybody is what do you tell your grandchildren in terms of future jobs? So I'll leave it there, but those are two things that the Democratic Party should be doing, and we supporting them. Thank you for all the good work you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and I agree with you. We would like, and we've been trying to get the Democratic Party to embrace, endorse, and champion a new deal for rural and working people.
Why don't we write it first?
I'm sorry?
We should write it and send it to them.
Oh, we did. We wrote the Rural New Deal. That's what PDA and Ruby did, and we shared it with them. And actually, 2 state parties have put it in their party platforms, Missouri.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Missouri,
I'd like to look at what you sent, but anyway, we'll talk about that.
for sure. And I realized that, Erica, you are supposed to be facilitating the Q&A, and I just charged ahead as I'm prone to do.
No worries. I'll take the baton from here. So folks, since we have a lot of people on, now that the press questions are done, if you wouldn't mind putting your questions in chat rather than raising your little Zoom hand, that'll make sure everyone gets their questions asked. One of the things I'm seeing is kind of a common in question is, why the shyness around using the word populism? People love populism. Populism is popular. Why don't we use it more? And Sarah had noted, well, she does use it a lot and her organization uses it a lot. I don't know if you want to say any more about that, Sarah, or if anyone else wants to comment.
I mean, we really at the Rural Democracy Initiative, in addition to being grant makers trying to build up a field of rural progressive organizing, we also are trying to change perceptions in the media and in philanthropy and in politics about the promise of rural America. And I don't talk to anybody without saying rural people are progressive economic populists. And that's how you should approach rural people. And I think that most people who live in cities don't know that, don't understand it. So I don't know if it works or not, but I say it every day, multiple times a day. I try to get it out there.
Sarah, and Ruby uses that language quite a bit as well in our own communications and discussions. So yeah, Bryce, we're with you.
We had way back when, if you look on the Ruby's YouTube channel, we had a talk by Thomas Frank, who was at the time also lamenting the fact that not enough people are using the term, and that and the whole meaning of the term's sort of been just distorted and co-opted. So you can go back and take a look at that. Question about what steps are you taking to support local communities building their own solutions so that rural and urban areas can trade resilience with each other instead of waiting on top-down fixes? And I think a lot of that is in the Rural New Deal. I don't know if Anthony or Alan or anyone else wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, we believe that it's not enough to just invest in rural communities and working class. You got to do it the right way. And as somebody who's been involved in rural development, rural economic development for about 40 years, we've learned a lot, and we've learned the right way and the wrong way to go about trying to revitalize communities that maybe were dependent on timber industry or the coal industry or oil or tobacco farming, and now they need a new and more diverse economy. So the Rural New Deal is just one of the platforms that really relentlessly says that the policies cannot be cookie cutter, top down. What they should be is investments in local leaders and local capacity so that people can solve their own problems as much as possible. And the good news is that's not just rhetoric, because in fact, we have hundreds of practitioners across the country, from West Virginia to the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, who know how to do this kind of bottom-up development. That's exactly what we're promoting and suggesting that state and federal government promote.
A comment from someone who lives in a logging community and loves nature and wonders about how do we generate the jobs in rural community, resource extraction jobs, but also protect the environment.
Anybody want to comment on that?
I don't want to just spend all the time talking, but our organization, the Heartland Fund, has a project called the Rural Climate Partnership, and the whole point of the climate partnership is to implement climate solutions in rural communities that are good for the economy. They create jobs, they save people's electricity bills, they generate on-farm income. But the thing that we hear is that you don't want to talk about them as environmental solutions or climate solutions. You want to start with they are about economic benefits, and they happen to have, clean air and other benefits on the side. So I don't know. I mean, I come from a logging community myself, and I think there are actually a lot of like pro-environment job creating opportunities.
Same in agriculture and fisheries. Lots of opportunities, things really happening, creating new and better jobs, but it's important how we frame those opportunities. Do you see anything, Erica?
Yeah, a general question about how does Ruby address the rural-urban divide or others? I mean, for Ruby, that is our bread and butter, and we have a whole training series that kind of takes a couple hours to step through about all the reasons we see, all the causes of the rural-urban divide, and what to do to overcome them. Part of which that led to this campaign, Beyond Resistance, is about overcoming a lot of that. I don't know, Anthony, if you want to give the 10-second version of our 2-hour rural urban divide training.
Well, no, I'll just say that one thing you might be interested in is I think we're going to go to the breakout rooms now, and you might want to go to the 4th breakout room where Meredith and Chanel are, because that community works program, it's as Erica said, overcoming the divide is fundamental to everything Ruby does, but perhaps one of our most concrete and effective ways that we're seeing it actually happen is through the Community Works Initiative. So you might be really interested in looking into that. Why don't we, I'm sure there's more questions, but why don't we go to the breakouts? Jean, I don't know if you can facilitate that, and spend somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes. And as Jane is getting up the options, again, what we're asking folks to do, whether you decide to do the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th room, it's the same thing, which is to jump immediately into brainstorming ideas about ways that you can be part of the Beyond Resistance campaign by organizing or sponsoring events. They could be learning events, they could be action events, they can be rallies and protests, they can be pro-worker gatherings, all kinds of things. But we would love to hear these ideas, and then we have a note taker in every room to try to capture them, and then we will mail them out to everybody, because again, we expect these Beyond Resistance follow-up events to be numerous and growing. So Jean, can you get us there? We'd like to do now, we appreciate about half, we had the 330 people at one point, we have 160 some right now. To wrap up, we've asked Dino Costello to give us a little kind of closing and wrap up. I've been getting to know Dino just for the last 6 or 8 months. He is on the staff of his local Teamsters in Philadelphia. He is also on the board and a very frequent analyst and writer for the Center for Working Class Politics, who have become a huge partner with Ruby in this campaign and elsewhere. So Dino, we're going to leave it to you to give us the words of wisdom and inspiration to wrap us up.
Thanks, Anthony. And I want to say I'm grateful to be here. Like Anthony said, I work with the Center for Working Class Politics. We are, as the name suggests, an organization that's geared toward re-engaging working class voters, especially those who've drifted away from the progressive side of the political spectrum and toward the right. We focus a lot on rural areas, especially rural small towns, Rust Belt towns as well. And one thing that we've learned through our research and the work that we've done is that a lot of union members and a lot of working class voters who have drifted away from the Democrats and drifted away from progressive politics are not going to be won back by a message of just resistance or anti-Trump or this and that, how bad the Republican Party is, how evil they are. They're going to be won back by a positive message, a message that says, look, we're for you and we want to help you. And they're also going to be won back if we actually have candidates and advocates that look and sound like the people they want to win. And that's why this campaign is really important. A lot of the mainstream Democrats, I'm not sure if any of you follow what's going on at the National Party, but a lot of the mainstream Democrats still aren't getting this message. It's something that Ro mentioned earlier, but right now we're seeing the DNC roll out a new strategy for beating Trump's populism by basically cursing a lot and acting really tough on camera. And that's just not going to cut it. What's going to work is having real candidates that actually look, sound, act like, and think like rural people, working people, blue collar people, people who work with their hands for a living, people who, as somebody said, you know, take a shower at the end of the day before the beginning of the day, at the end of the workday before they go to work. These are the people who are going to win back working class and blue collar Americans. And these are the kind of people that Beyond Resistance is trying to actually engage, right? So what do those people want? Well, more than anything, they want a better economic system. They want better jobs. They want higher wages. They don't just want welfare programs. What they want is an entire new economic structure that actually values the work that they do. They don't want to learn to code. They don't want to move across the country for a job in a knowledge hub city. They want to be able to live in the place that they live with dignity, with decent wages to raise a family and buy a home. These are things that weren't that crazy just 20, 30 years ago, but now they're out of reach for so many working Americans. And this is the kind of stuff that we need to be saying. And we need to be saying it in a way that doesn't drip with the kind of condescension and elitism that a lot of the mainstream Democrats have when they come into these blue collar places. So I'm not going to take much of your time. I just want to say I think it's really important that people get involved in campaigns like this. We need to re-engage blue collar workers and rural people, farmers and workers across the country who've drifted away from us, and re-engage them on their terms. And that's why I think you guys you need to get involved. You need to get people you know involved in the Beyond Resistance campaign. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks for your time, Anthony. Thanks for everything, and everybody else who's been working on this campaign. I think we've got a long way to go, but it's really important that we get started.
Thank you so much, Dino. That was beautiful. It was profound and perfect. So with Dino's words, I'll just say, remember, this was just the first night. You will be getting emails from us, not every day. We're not going to beg you for money, but probably every week or two, we're going to send you an email with updates about upcoming events and opportunities, people who want to work together on joint projects. You will be in the loop with the Beyond Resistance campaign. And we ask, as Dino said, that you just spread the word to friends and colleagues and others, because we need millions of people engaged in this campaign. It's good to start with 330. We've got to magnify that about 1,000-fold. So thanks so much to everybody, all of our partners, and I hope everybody has a wonderful night.